It's a good thing.
Hi everyone, we're back on Education Forum, the special edition. I'm Michael Baltimore, the producer of this show, along with the host of Education Forum, Greg Blaylock, Jeff Conklin. These guys have been doing this for over 4 years now. Quite a history of doing these shows, and you've been doing them once a week for quite a while.
Yes,
That's a lot. You've built up quite a portfolio of shows, and so in just a moment we're going to take a look at some of the clips from those shows, just a few that we picked out at random to put up there, and we'll let you take a look at what happens on that show.
Oh my.
But you guys tell me a little bit about this show itself. Now, you come in, how do you prepare for the show? I understand, Jeff, we've heard your great voice, that voiceover coming in saying, welcome to Education Forum, I'm Jeff Conklin, and then you guys kind of introduce Greg, and then your guest.
Right.
And so you've had a long list of guests.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
I want to get to that in a minute, but tell me a little bit about your preparation and also your vision for this show. You know, you're doing this. What do you hope that happens from doing this show? But how did you kind of get started, and how did you kind of get this structure and format going?
You know, it's funny, when we were originally putting the show together, and you and I had talked about it, and then Greg joined the faculty, and I went to him and said, hey, let's do a show. Let's put this together. So he and I sat down and kind of figured out what we were going to do, and we had originally planned on a lot more planning, a lot more scripting, and you know, this is what happened.
Okay.
And
well, I think what we found is through experience that we can over-plan and we can over-script. And I think one of the most interesting pieces of the show, at least from my perspective, and I think, Jeff, we've talked a little bit about this, is whoever we have on as a guest, if it's over-planned, then it's just not a very interesting conversation to us. And if it's not interesting to us, I don't think it's interesting to anybody else.
Right. There's no spontaneity.
That's exactly right. And I think one of the values of the show is bringing on people and talking about subjects that we know very little about. And so we'll do some prep and background prep in terms of whatever topic it is we're going to discuss, but we're really there to talk with the expert and learn from them.
Yes.
And if we know too much about it, it makes it difficult then to have a discussion that's at the level we want to really have for our audience.
Right. It doesn't draw them out.
That's right.
Yeah,
we
you
know
want
too
to tap
much.
into their passion, the things that they really feel strongly about. And so too much scripting will interfere with that. It becomes, now, the other thing I've noticed in doing this this television project for quite a while now is a lot of people get nervous when the red lights come on and the camera's on. So
Greg used to throw up. Remember at the start of the show, Greg, you know, we'd be ready to go and he'd dash off the set.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
In fact, my bucket is still right there off camera.
There's a lot of things we won't talk about today on the show, but you know, the notion that it is different. There's some even artificiality. There's this notion that this is not how we carry on conversation during the day and in our daily lives. And all of a sudden, you got a bunch of bright lights on. You got a camera crew here. You've got television. You're recording things, and it just puts another level of complexity, even on a simple conversation between people. So how do you guys are you aware of how that affects you in this process?
You know, when we get ready to do this show, Greg and I sit down the hour before and knock off our questions. And usually he's done some background and he shoots it to me, you know, because it's somebody we, you know, bring it on. And we'll sit down and we'll knock off our questions and say, but it's always, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Right.
You know, this is where we'll start, and we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, those are our starters, and you know, nobody ever goes like you think it'll go. You know,
Right.
well, some people you expect to be like a really whiz-bang guest, and it's just kind of, and then other people you thought, well, you know, we'll get them on, but where the heck's going to go? And those shows take right off.
They're
We've
interesting.
had some really good ones like that.
Yeah. So it's some personality work going on there too, but you can only kind of structure it just so much. You want it to be, you said spontaneity. This idea of this is a natural conversation, and it's leading people to talk about what they're interested in and sharing it with our audience as well. So yeah, not too many questions.
No.
And then maybe going where the guest leads you a little bit, and maybe asking more about it.
But you do have to have, you know, pretty well set up for segments, a 20-minute segment worth of questions, and then because we have to guide it.
Sure.
And you know, as we sit down here and they're a nervous wreck,
and
Greg will always say to them, it's just a conversation. We're just going to talk.
Right.
And he'll say that to everybody. We're just going to talk. And they'll say, well, can I see the questions?
Right.
And I don't know if that's a winner or not. We've
Well,
often
there's
kept
some-
them
there's-
away from them and said,
Right.
yeah, this is what we're going to ask you, and just take it back. But
Well, I've done some research in this area, and there's some people who write about the notion of not giving the questions, because then the guest will prepare a canned answer, very short to the point, answering
Yes.
the question,
Yes.
and it's not conversational. And so there's a group of folks that say, don't give the, you might say, we're going in these areas, we'll talk about
We're going to
this, and
explore
gonna-
this topic.
We've done that,
explore,
and we've
but
done that,
not
yeah.
specifically a question. And also, you may have the guest who comes up and says something that you never thought about, and you all of a sudden you're curious about that,
Sure.
and you should ask.
But we also get the guest that gives us all the questions.
I was just going to say, we have had instances
Yes,
where
yes.
they'll say, okay, so this is what I want you
This
to
is
ask
what you're going to ask me about.
And
Okay,
which
that's safe.
on a certain level is helpful, and some, we'll pay attention to that, but we don't really go by that per se, question
Right.
by question.
Right.
But we do try to, and it is about really what that person is saying is,
yeah.
these are things I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that helps shape the conversation, helps us know where to take the conversation.
Makes it really interesting.
That's
you know,
right.
you go where their interests are, and they talk about
There's
them.
been some fascinating shows out of this and this series now, and it's just amazing. Let me ask you this: what about? I guess I could ask you the most interesting guest and those kind of questions, but what's a show that you recall that really sort of surprised you, and something either happened or didn't happen, or it just kind of was not what you were thinking it was going to be?
You know what I think about is back when we first started, and everything was done green screen.
Right,
Remember?
right.
And you couldn't wear green on the set.
That's true.
And the walls are green, and we had the green drape over the little table. And we had that
That
little
was the
table.
days,
And we
yeah.
brought on a guest, and they came in and they're wearing a green T-shirt.
Right.
And then we had to find a shirt for them. Remember that? But those were the days. And then when we used to do it live.
Right.
I mean, and
There was a time.
the one I always think about is as soon as you would mic us, we'd be streaming live on the web.
That's right.
And
that's
Greg's
right.
wife was
Sorry about
listening
that.
at
That's
work,
right.
and she calls him up and said, "Do you know you guys are streaming live?
Right.
Everything you're saying is going out there. We're not even filming yet."
Right.
So yeah.
Well, there was a time when, and of course, a lot of people who've known about what we've done on this television project is sort of model it after Leo Laporte, Twit Studio, This Week in Technology Studio out in Petaluma, California. And one of the things that they do is stream all day.
Right.
To the
Oh,
web,
they do?
and they'll do the preparation for the show up until just getting ready for the show. You'll see them getting mic'd up and testing and so forth, and then they'll start. And that's what you see eventually.
Right.
So
Right.
you'll see the countdown in the show, and then at the end of it, they cut it, and then it'll keep going. There'll be conversations after the show that stream live.
But we'd like to
thought
do.
that was
We
an
always thought that would be
interesting
kind of cool to see behind the scenes.
Right, I
As we're
always
getting ready to
thought
go,
so, too.
you know, and
I
the
think
chatter.
what that, I
Yeah,
think what
I
that
thought
does
so.
for the audience is it creates a higher level of authenticity, I think, for the
Right.
show, because what you see what leads to the actual final product. Typically for a show, we don't
Right.
see what leads up to that,
No,
what
no,
happens afterwards, but
no.
that's a great example
Yeah.
of how you can really help support the authenticity of
Yeah,
of-
and I'm one of
your
those
show.
guys under the hood. I want to know how things work.
How do you get there?
Yeah, how
Yeah,
does this
yeah,
happen?
yeah.
How did they do that? And there's all the training that we've had and our crews had. I mean, we are really interested in the mechanics and the logistics and how things work. We have a great crew here that we've
Absolutely.
had some folks with us for quite a while now. And
Some of them are a little suspicious.
well,
but
you
for
got,
the most
we
part.
won't
But they
mention
always
names.
carry us,
We won't mention
you know,
names, but
they're the ones that make it go,
Let me
so,
just say that they've learned camera skills, camera techniques. They've learned editing skills. They've learned live production skills.
How to set up the set,
We have a
yeah.
practicum that's coming in from the communication department that I'm teaching once a week here, and so we're starting the new show. And there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And if I were on the outside, I'd want to know how you guys were doing that. So we may spend a little more time talking about
That'd be
that
cool.
in another way.
That'd be cool, huh?
At some point, and kind of showing people, because obviously we want to have people join us and be involved in this television project here at Columbus State University. All right, so we're talking about guests.
Right.
Now is there any? I asked about surprises. Were there some people that you just went, "Oh my goodness, I'm not sure this is going to go the way we wanted"? Is there, or is somebody was just a really dynamic guest that just sort of blew you away a little bit?
Well, you know who's always dynamic, I think, and we've talked about this before, is Dr. Sean Cruzen.
Oh gosh, yes.
You know, and
yes.
he's got his own show, but
Yes, yeah.
he's somebody that can sit down and talk about anything interstellar and make it interesting.
Oh, he did.
Right.
He can take the most nerdiest technical things and relate it to dummies like us, and in a very interesting way. And so he's somebody that's always interesting.
I always liked Greg Doman.
Greg Doman.
Greg
Remember?
Doman.
Always,
You know, we
yes,
had him
that's right.
last
Right.
He's been
of
on
his
a
life,
couple of
you know.
times.
He was.
Yeah,
He was.
that was really
He was
nice.
always
Of course,
good.
Greg is passing on, but
Yeah.
I mean, left a great legacy here at the university and was on that show. We're real proud to have
Yeah,
him on
yeah,
here
That's right.
as well. Yeah, Sean Cruzen again. Now I know you've
How about
had,
the first season guests?
Yes.
I mean, they went out on a limb for us.
They really
I mean, we
did.
called up other people at campus that were friends and said, you know, we're doing a show. Can you be on?
On live.
Yeah, live. Yeah, and they
live,
were
by the
live,
way,
and
yeah.
they came.
Yeah, they
you know,
did,
they did.
absolutely.
They
you
held
really,
us up.
You guys have really had to talk people into this, but not knowing what it was going to be like when you came on a program.
That's exactly
so,
right.
that makes it a little more exciting, and from a viewer point of view, you get to say, okay, what's going to happen next?
Right.
And
So when the microphone falls off of somebody's lapel
Right,
as they're
and it
talking,
has happened.
and
Yeah.
Dr. Brubaker continues talking and just pulls up his microphone and puts it
Hooks
back
it back
up.
on.
And
Well, this-
those are the
Should I
things
be
that
talking
think
into this?
that makes it very interesting.
those are things that we have to keep the show rolling.
Yes,
and
indeed.
All right, let's change the format just a little bit. I'm going to ask James to pull up a couple of clips, and we'll show one. We might just stop and have you guys comment on it in just a moment. So I want to ask James if he would go ahead and find that first clip. We're going to take a look at Education Forum, the show. Now, no promises here, and you guys don't know what we're going to show, and I'm not really sure what we're going to show, but let's just take a look. And these are real short clips.
Okay.
James is going to roll them now. And we'll kind of go from there. We'll ask Omo to help us with the audio in the studio. All right.
Learning that's taking place, you know, that's the multiplier that we're looking for.
Okay. So, going back to the studio, what do you see our impact being on the university? I mean, what can we really do to get out there and get our message? I mean, we're brand new.
Yeah.
You know, this is a new venture for the university. You know.
It is. It's Dr. Baltimore kind of started this in his own little world over here in the College of Education, and we saw its possibilities.
Okay.
We
Okay.
saw the reach that it could have, and so we kind of went and co-opted it.
Okay.
And said, you know, can we broaden this? Can we make it CSU TV
Instead of COE HP TV.
Right.
Okay.
Which I would dare say nobody knows what COEHP means outside of you guys. who run it.
COEHP.
Right.
Exactly.
So, you know, my vision is that it is another avenue for showcasing to different audiences who we are and what we're about.
Okay. So we've never had a launch. We've never had. Are we going to have one?
Well, it's not a secret.
Okay,
It's
okay.
not a secret. We want people
All
to know
right, so that was a very interesting clip. Now, that was John Lester. I might say Dr. John Lester. He's just gotten his
That's right.
doctorate.
Congratulations
By the way.
to him, by the way.
Congratulations to John on that. He has been a major supporter of the Columbus State Television Project, and so you guys were really asking him questions about the television here at Columbus State.
We were trying to pin him down.
Okay.
Yeah,
well-
we were trying to pin him down on some things that we thought were important to you and important to the studio. Are we really going to have a rollout? You know,
Right.
and we were told no.
Okay, there you go. Well, and the project's kind of continued here, and so it's very interesting to see that the administration here at Columbus State has supported this project for as long as they have, and allowed us to do a number of things. And you know, I mentioned at one point in another show that part of my job is the Content Creation Committee,
Right.
where we're inviting people who have ideas to come in, talk about them, see if we can put together a project, something that'll be viable and interesting to people outside. And we're just growing more and more because with the new generation of students coming in, they've had this background. Everybody has a video camera on their phone. They're YouTube connected and Google connected and so forth and so on. So we have really begun to roll with having both students and faculty on this television project, and they're coming up with some great ideas. We've got movie review shows, we've got political science, we've got history on the hooch,
Right,
the
right.
Chattahoochee, by the way,
Yeah,
which is really a living history show. So you're going to see a lot about what happens in Columbus. So I don't want to keep going on about that, but I'll tell you what, let's take a look at another clip. And James, if you'll pull up another clip of this show Education Forum, right here at Columbus State Television.
And hopefully this has more of me in it.
It should have more of you
almost
at
saw
some point. I
you
don't
in
know
the
if we
back.
intentionally cut that out, but all right. Well, looks like Jeff.
Well, mindfulness is the capacity to be able to be sort of present in the moment.
In the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which sort of like there is if you were to put a functional MRI on someone and watch their brain and actually working, your capacity to be able to stay present, to stay connected to your inner experience and your outer experience. So
Okay.
it's sort of a way of maintaining some balance between those two things. And the capacity to do that allows you to be able to make a different set of choices.
Okay.
When you were in a place where you were highly affectively charged, say you're driving on the way to work, you know?
Sure.
And the person in front of you is moving way slow. And so so you take a wrench and you throw it at them.
Right.
Or you say things about their mom
Of course.
that you normally wouldn't say in that state. So in that moment, you are not balanced. You're not mindful. You are simply reacting, and the situation is lost to you. So if you have the capacity to be able to build that, you actually can. You can practice that sort of thing. You can do that, and it's a cornerstone of emotional wellness and balance. The capacity with students, for instance.
Okay.
Like. One of the biggest things that happens with students is this thing called procrastination. You guys may
Right.
do it
Oh,
too.
we may have seen it before. Yeah.
Well, procrastination in its way is a form of anxiety disorder. So we don't procrastinate, playing Grand Theft Auto or something, the things we
Right,
dig, you know?
right.
You guys play the Grand Theft Auto?
All the time.
All the time, okay, yeah. So you do those things because they don't generate a fear or anxiety response, but the math test you have does. And so you often find, and so being in a non-mindful state and being
Okay.
able to think of or approaching the textbook sitting on your desk, you react in a reflexive sort of manner. You sort of lose the moment and you sort of fight or flight mechanisms come on
Okay.
and you flee usually.
Right.
Often the way that can happen in a fight response is you may start cleaning the house. You may
Wow.
generate a certain
Yeah.
activity.
We all know who that
In fact,
We were
when
surprised.
I was in graduate school, you'd always
Dan
tell when there was
Rose, who is executive director. I give the executive on his
Oh,
name.
very nice.
He's
Very
the
nice.
director of the counseling center
Yes.
here at Columbus State University and does wonderful work there.
Oh,
and that organization helps so many students through a lot of issues. And by the way, coming to college is not stress-free, by the way. So
That's
there's
right.
a lot going on. And that center's there available to our students free of charge. And Dan just does a wonderful job. He's a very interesting person,
Oh,
he's
as
a
we all
character.
know.
Yes, he
can
is.
say things
Yes,
that
he
we're
is.
not
Yes,
really
he
going
is,
about.
yeah.
Describe what happened on that show and tell me about your thoughts about what just happened. We saw that clip.
Well, you
Gotta
know,
watch
the-
the whole episode though.
Yeah.
The thing about Dr. Rose, and if he's got his own show, by the way,
Yeah, yes.
and so if you've ever watched his show, you pick up on the fact that at any given moment, he can go in any direction.
Right.
And that was what was really fun about that particular show from my perspective.
Right.
Is as
We
we
had
were
no
talking
idea.
in the last segment, it's about shaping the conversation. It's very difficult to shape the conversation with him because
can't.
he's very effective at shaping it himself, and so you never know where it's going. And it was very interesting that way. The other thing I thought was interesting was how he knew, and I have no idea. He's the only person that I guess on campus knows how much I play the Grand Theft Auto.
Well,
And
he
throw
has
wrenches at other drivers.
There is something about that. He is a very interesting person, and we love Dan, and he's
Right.
great. But you guys really, being on his show, I know that it's sometimes difficult to kind of steer him in the direction to get to the serious and mental health and psychology issues that I was
Right.
thinking we would talk about, and he's kind of throwing the jokes out there and putting
But you know
things at ease.
what's important about that is he makes excellent points. Like you learn a lot.
yeah,
I find
yeah.
myself when he's in here recording his own show, and I'll come in to do something quickly. I find myself oftentimes just standing and just listening and watching him record because he's funny, he's interesting to listen to, but he always gets to a point that makes you go, you know.
Yes.
And in that particular show, you know, he did that several times, and in that way you learn a lot from him.
With mindfulness. We learned a lot
Mindfulness in
about
that clip.
Yeah, the idea
Perfect
of kind
example.
of being, understanding yourself and others and how those things interact and those two people and groups interact with each other and how we can kind of really control and manage some of these things that we didn't think we could control about ourselves when
That's
we're
right.
in moments of stress. So
Right, right. That's
Dan
right.
has a great he's an expert in the field of psychoanalytic, psychodynamic psychotherapy, and he really brings that in for all of us to understand more about those very lofty topics of how people behave and act and interact. So I'm glad. I tell you what, I just can't wait to get to the next clip. So I'm going to ask James to go ahead and pull up one more clip here, and let's take a look at Education Forum, a clip from one of the previous shows.
Sure, I understand. About 2/3 of the students that start here at CSU as freshmen end up finishing with a degree.
Well, no.
Okay.
It would seem that way.
Right.
We have a retention rate of 67% once we get them here, which of course needs to be higher. And I'll tell you some things that we're doing to make that, to raise that retention rate. But the sad part is that the retention rate after 6 years, that's what we want to look at, is graduating students, and usually it takes 5 to 6 years sometimes to graduate students.
Right.
Our retention rate is 42%.
Okay, now let me try to put this into some perspective.
Sure.
Nationwide, what is the average amount of time it takes to graduate?
Historically, we know that over 50% of our students will complete in 6 years.
Okay, we will, but what about nationwide? Where do we fall with that?
Well, we're lower than that, because
Okay,
if nationwide is 50% and we're at 42%,
Right.
and we anticipate, we've heard that we're going to even be lower than that this year when our December numbers roll out as well. Yeah.
Okay, so your whole goal
Yes.
is to try to reverse that.
Right, absolutely.
So why do we lose students, or why do students not finish?
Well, and I think if you think about 6 years ago, we were right in the middle of 2007, 2008.
Okay.
And you know, we had a bad hit with our economy then.
Oh, we sure did.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still feeling the effects.
Absolutely. And so that has a tremendous effect on our students' ability to pay and parents' ability to pay, and the availability of funding. So
All
that's
right.
one huge resource that took a
Yeah,
cut
it
for
is.
us.
Yeah.
And then the other things that we have found out is just the persistence. Now, it's important to talk about retention, is what the university does to hold those students, to retain those students.
All right,
to
that was a
progress them.
great clip.
That was a great
That
Yeah,
was Lisa
yeah.
Shaw,
Yes.
who I've worked with for a long time. She's a graduate of our counseling program. She's now an administrator and oversees advising here at Columbus
Yes,
State
she does,
University.
yeah.
Very knowledgeable about what's going on. You were asking some tough questions there. You want to know how we fit with the national average.
Where are we really? Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And she
was
worked
there.
so hard to help students, advise students, really mentor students through the process here. And again, we said this is not a stress-free environment. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on students to succeed, both from themselves, their parents, and others. And that was a very interesting show that really
was.
talked about where we are
Yeah.
in our retention, our graduation rates here at Columbus State. What do you guys remember about that?
She took us to lunch for barbecue afterwards.
Okay, well that's good enough.
But
that was a moment.
the great thing about that show, but really about her in general, is this is somebody that really started the Academic Success Center.
Yes.
From
Right.
nothing.
She did.
She's the director of it, and
Yes.
she. It's a whole new center that she a few years ago put together, was asked to put together, and jumped right in and did it, and I think it's really had an effect on students.
But remember, that was a lot of that was based on her work she did here
On her
in the
work
College
here.
of Education
That's
and Health
absolutely
Professions,
right.
because she was doing so much in the SAFE office.
That's right.
That,
That's exactly right.
benefited all of us. So.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
advising and
and-
field experience.
And that's what I respect about her and her work, not just the fact that she's doing important work, but the way that she goes about it, and her success, I think, is phenomenal.
And if you ever sit with her when she's talking to a student,
right.
she's such a sensitive person. She does a really nice job when she's,
Yes.
even if she's confronting someone.
Right.
She does a very, very
That's
good job.
a
with
good
it.
skill to
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
because sometimes you have to confront
need
people.
that.
You
and
do
have
need to
set-
do that. Yeah.
As you said, Mike, college is a stressful time for students, and going to college is so much more than just attending classes.
Oh,
there's a lot of in between that happens. There's a lot of outside of classes academic growth, but personal, social, emotional growth that happens. And universities like Columbus State University support all of those areas for students. And Lisa Shaw is somebody with her Academic Success Center that does a lot of that sort of stuff.
And she understands that it's a whole person. It's not just going to classes.
That's right.
That this is life.
That's
you know?
right.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I just appreciate the work you guys have done on this show, because I don't know if we would have had the opportunity in any other venue to hear the Lisa Shaws and the Dan Rose and those people to really talk about what's of concern to them. But by the way, we've just scratched the surface on showing those clips. We have many more. We could go on the rest of the day, perhaps, showing clips. After all, this is our longest running show on Columbus State Television. Yeah. But you guys have done a great job, and I really appreciate your work here. I really do, and I really want to publicly acknowledge that because you've brought guests in that really informed us about what's going on this campus, and I think a lot of people out there in our audience really want to know more about Columbus State University, but also the people at Columbus State University. When you got the caliber of people like the Sean Cruzens and the Lisa Shaws and the Dan Rose and those people that come on and really talk about what's going on, you give others a sense of what this university is about and how wonderful a campus this really is, and it's because of the people.
Well, and like when we had the head of the campus police.
Yes,
you know, Russ Drew. That was, you know, that was great. We learned a lot about things then.
Oh yes.
We learned a lot, and then we had Chip Reese talking about BART.
Right, BART.
And then when we brought in the people from the
way,
Recreation Center, behavioral assessment.
Response team.
Response team.
Did I just make that up? Okay.
No.
I wasn't sure myself about that. But yeah, that's where when students maybe get in trouble, there's a team of folks that support them through the process and kind of get them back on track. But there are many others.
Oh, there
Any
are.
others you can name?
Well, remember when we had Wes Craven's kid on from the rec center?
Oh, Rick Craven.
Yes,
okay, no, you said you were. Okay,
remember we kept doing that to him. You know.
Well, the Recreation Center is a wonderful place.
And then he brought some of his people on. He brought it, you know, and that was great. You know, that was good.
Well, you know, and I think a real valuable piece of this show is the fact that we've had people from across campus, rank and file faculty, to the president on this show at different times. We talked about Greg Doman, provost, on this show. So we've had a range of people from campus on this show.
On here, but also, Greg, if I interrupt, I'll just say you've had the mayor of Columbus on.
That's what I was going to get at. We've also been able to bring on people from the community. We've had people from as far away as Atlanta. We've had GBI on here.
That's right.
We've had people from the Center for Leadership and Disability on here. We've had the mayor. We've had people from our community.
Remember the folks from Fort Benning talking about PTSD?
That's exactly. That's right. That's right. So we're able to draw people from around the state, really.
You've had some really, what I consider stars at this campus too, like the Susan Rock of the campus, and the Cindy Tickners, and so on. Those people who their initiatives and the things that they've done, the projects they've done on campus have just affected this entire community, and they're really delivering a high level of expertise and bringing students along and teaching students and coming up with projects and doing all those wonderful things. So you guys really have, this is a place to be, right? EducationForum
it's the place to be.
It's the place to be.
Wherever we are, that's the place to be.
Well, I don't know.
That's what I keep telling everybody.
Well, we've had a great time today.
Well,
we just want to.
We've had tons of support from you.
Well,
you've done a good job. You've been directing and producing us since the jump.
Yes.
You know, we sat down and you and I talked about how we wanted to do it. It's taken off from there, and you've always been there. And if it wasn't for Greg, the show wouldn't go.
You know,
and I just show up and do the voiceovers.
Well, listen, you're the mainstay of this program, and I tell you what, you know, oftentimes I would get things going, and you would accuse me of reading the newspaper while the show was going on. That was absolutely true, by the way. I'm interested more in
our favorite director
in the Georgia game.
I knew I would come back and listen to it later, but we're good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been my pleasure today as producer of this this wonderful program, EducationForum, to get to know Jeff and Greg a little bit more, talk with them about their background, talk about the guests, the show itself, because it's been a wonderful project for me to be involved in, and I've loved every minute of it. We've laughed, we joke, we carry on, and we get serious and provide information for people as well. And couldn't have done it without you guys. And I tell you what, it's been my pleasure to be here with you. And I know a lot of people appreciate these two gentlemen right here, great colleagues, great friends here at Columbus State University. So I guess that's about it for the show today. I'm Michael Baltimore for Greg Blaylock, Jeff Conklin. We'll see you next time. We'll have a real guest on EducationForum next time. Tune in every week right here at csu.tv on the web, on your Roku player, on iTunes, and on the web. We'll see you next time.